So Maurice has been working with us as we've been rolling out a proof of value concept within Tesco. And it was really a proof of value concept of Me Redefined, because it was the first time that we were really deploying our technology to frontline non-desk-based workers and seeing how they compared to more head office and white-collar workers in this interaction. He is also a top bloke. And I mean that. He has flown over from Ireland on St. Paddy's Day last night to have a lonely pint in an airport just to be with you lot here today and share what they have been doing. And so please put your hands together for Maurice.
Thank you, Lindsay. One of our winning values or behaviours at Tesco is be brave, and I can certainly say that Lindsay was brave. I don't think she realised she was asking an Irishman to speak the morning after St. Patrick's Day, so but we're all good. So lovely to be here, and I'm really excited to share the journey we've been on. So the first thing to say is we're not experts. We're very much exploring this space. We've been really lucky to have partnered with Lindsay and the team. They've really helped us kind of uncover and discover, I guess, this journey of what does this whole midlife space look like. And in particular for me, I'm looking at this through the lens of this is a strategic workforce planning exercise. So, I'll talk in a little minute about Tesco in Ireland. I'll talk about the context. Why is this topic important to us right now? I'll talk about some of our internal demographics and share why that's leading us down this direction and a bit of a problem statement. And we'll take it from there. But I guess the first thing to say is we're not experts, but we have gone on a journey with Redefined, and they're really helping us uncover the things we should be asking ourselves as a business. We have a large colleague population, and we're trying to understand what the future of work looks like. As opposed, I'm sure many of you are having those conversations, and it's not a binary conversation. So this is a talent conversation in my mind. It's a workforce planning conversation. It's a career coaching conversation. It's all of that. So look, we'll touch on a little bit over the next 15 minutes or so, and I'm happy to take any questions at any point, but I think we have some time at the end to do that. If you see me referring to my notes, because I discovered when I got here that writing is very small on the notes page. So, so if someone smack bang somewhere in the middle to the other end of that midlife stage, excuse me if I do have to refer back every now and again. I find it difficult to stand still, so I will walk around a little bit. So if I'm in the way, just give me a shout. The other thing I think I'll share at the end, spoiler alert, this is a good story, right? So we've learned loads of stuff over the last 12 months. The other thing is that this is a very emotional topic. So what started out for me as a kind of a transactional piece of research, if you like, really uncovered to me just how sensitive and how emotional this is for colleagues individually, which I guess you could assume, but when you see some of the quotes that we have from some of our colleagues around being involved in this project and in being involved in this proof of value pilot, as I would call it, I think it's really powerful. So I'm not going to read them all out, but just to share with you as a starting point, this is a really sensitive and emotional topic for individual colleagues. So as we might take a very commercial, talent-led, corporate view of this, this is a commercial research and a commercial decision. There's people at the heart of all these conversations who are looking at their life and trying to make significant and material decisions. So that's what I want to start with, that this is about people. This is about people in your organization. It's your friends and family too. So a former boss of mine always said, whatever you do in HR, remember, the person you're talking to is going home to a kitchen table somewhere. And there's somebody else sitting at that kitchen table who has an emotional relationship with that person, whether it's a friend or family member, whatever it might be. So all of these discussions end up at the kitchen table. Somebody's going to go home and talk about what is our plan for later in life? What's our plan for retirement? Am I happy? Do I want to stay doing this till I retire? All those things. So just as a reminder, that's where I'm starting. And that was a big, I guess, reminder for me as part of this work that people are at the heart of it and there's real emotions at the heart of this. So a little bit about Tesco, just to kick us off. So Tesco Ireland specifically, we have, and I won't read all of these, but look, we have nearly 250 stores across Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland. More importantly, we have about 22,000 colleagues. We have 100 nationalities employed across our business. And 9 out of 10 colleagues recommend us as a great place to work. And consistently, I've been with Tesco 5.5 years. We do an annual employee survey. Consistently, where 8 to 9 out of 10 colleagues would say, I recommend Tesco as a place to work to a family member or to a friend, which is really important. And then, for today's conversation, really important. Right now, 35% of our colleagues are age 45 plus. It's about 25% already north of 50. So from a problem statement point of view or an opportunity statement point of view, as Lindsay would say, what are we doing to understand the cohort of our colleagues in midlife and how are they thinking about the future of their work? And I mentioned at the start around the future of work and relating that to COVID. I'm sure all of you have had those conversations around the kitchen table. You know, coming out of COVID, what do I really want out of life? And what we've seen through this work with Redefined is our colleagues are very much in that space. What do I want out of life? Reevaluating where they're working, what are they working at, and I'll share some of that insight shortly. Probably more importantly for us is what are the challenges we're trying to address with this work that we're doing? There's three main spaces that I guess I bucket this into. We are a growing business. We're continuing to invest for growth, and we need talent to fulfill that growth. So our stores don't operate by themselves. Behind every little help in a Tesco store, there's a colleague. Whether that's in-store, whether that's online, wherever that may be, there's a colleague behind every little help that we provide to our customers, and that's really, really important. The other thing is, I mentioned the 100 nationalities that we employ. One of the key, I guess, beliefs of Tesco across our group is that we should really mirror as best we can the communities that we operate in. So when you walk into your local Tesco store, whether that's in Manchester or Monaghan in Ireland, you want to feel like you're in your community. You want to feel like the people in that business are from your community, are local and are connected. That's something we really believe drives our business and is really important. It also drives how we hire, how we integrate with the community that we operate in. We want to be local. We want to support the local community. We want to be an invested part of that community. And I mentioned our plan for growth and continued investment for growth. We have a very strong part of our DNA is that everyone's welcome at Tesco. So when we think about our workforce planning and our strategic workforce planning in the future, yes, people in the midlife, we want to make sure that we're fit for purpose for the future of work for colleagues who are coming out of midlife into later years and what that looks like. We're also equally at the other end of the spectrum trying to make sure we're attractive and can attract younger people into our business and to see an opportunity in that space. So we've got contrasting or competing elements there that have to be balanced and have to be given equal attention. So when Lindsay referenced in her opening piece there around, a decision to make, do you see the midlife colleagues as an opportunity or as some kind of diminishing resource? I think we have to really look at that and be very clear about there's an opportunity here. If I think about me and some of my friends and some of my family, heading towards mid-50s, am I counting down the clock to retirement, or am I thinking I've got 15, 16 really good years left of me and I want that to be really fruitful and enjoyable? I want it to be enjoyable, right? So that's the opportunity, that's the proposition. And then, moving on, just a little bit of quick context before I get into the actual proof of value. This is really important. So, as a business, we operate in the environment that we're in. So from a macro point of view, there's a couple of factors in the Irish economy, I guess, that would lend itself to the problem statement that we have. As a country, we're nearly at full employment. We have an aging population and a birth rate that's dropping. So the available talent in the market is reducing, okay? The war for talent in that context means, as a growing business, we have to differentiate from our competition. So for me, that's the primary objective. How do we make sure that we make our employee value proposition differentiated from the competition? What can we offer, whether it's young people, older people, and everyone in between? What is the opportunity we can offer? The future workforce, I mentioned COVID. Again, come out of that. People really have, and our colleagues are telling us they are reevaluating what they want from work. So whether that's people saying, I want to work from home more, we do have hybrid working, we have flexible working policies. We're seeing more and more people wanting to engage in that conversation, and I see that as a positive thing. I don't see that as a challenge for the business. We can accommodate all of that. Before COVID, we had flexible working policies anyway. It's nothing new. So it just means engaging that conversation differently. In Tesco, I mentioned already around serving our customers, that is our purpose, serving our customers, communities and planet a little better every day. That should also be an ambition for us, for our colleagues. How do we make sure we're fit for purpose for our colleagues? What's the every little help we can offer our colleagues as part of serving our customers? Standing proud together, everyone's welcome at Tesco, something we talk about. Lovely stat for you. So in a world where we're tracking gender pay gaps, we're tracking, we will now be tracking EU pay transparency and all that kind of stuff. I have a lovely number for you. So if I said to you in the context of age, the number 76, what are the one or two things that jump out to you? Just one or two quickly. 76. As a number, in the context of age, what we're talking about today, what would you think that number represents? The oldest person? Give me one more. Experience. I love this one. If we were reporting an age gap at Tesco Ireland today, the age gap would be 76. It's the gap between the youngest person and the oldest person working in our organisation today. So Muriel is 92. She works 5 days a week, 3 hours a day, because she wants to, because she can, and because she values the social interaction. So I love that stat. And so long may that last. And then I love my Tesco Club card. I guess I go back to that piece around, as a business, we want our customers to choose us because of the value we offer, because of the service our colleagues give, whatever it might be. In that same way, I want our colleagues to choose us, to stay with us, to finish their career with us, and lead a fulfilling life beyond work. So with that, we had 5 goals and we partnered with Redefined. We wanted to, first of all, I'd maybe switch that number a bit. We were curious about the future of work and how we needed to reposition what we do as a business to get to a positive experience for our colleagues. We wanted to look at any early evidence of what we call save to invest, opportunities to invest in spaces that made sense by saving in other spaces, just a really good muscle for the business. We wanted to really understand how we could support long-tenured colleagues with the rest of their career. The average tenure of our colleagues in Tesco in Ireland is 13 years. It's really positive. Once somebody's with us around 3 years, they tend to stay. And we really value that because of the experience that gives our customers. But we need to understand, have we really spent enough time historically really understanding what our colleagues want and what they need, and how can we support them more? And then age intelligence. To be fair, we've got lots of brilliant data, but through the lens of age, through the lens of midlife, Redefined really helped us kind of look at that differently and brought some of the external research to bear for us, which was, what are other organizations doing? What can we learn from them? And we put that with our own internal insights. What do we see? So I'm going to share with you a little bit of what we've discovered. We did a 14-week proof of value program, much to Lindsay and the team's hesitation, because normally you'd want to do this over 6 or 7 months. And we said, look, we want to do a really short sprint, get a really good flavor for what's in here. Let's pick some really good colleagues, a really good mix, and let's see what we can uncover. And then we go again. We see what happens after that. It's been really positive. 14 digital learning modules, 25 hours of self-paced coaching, and then facilitated by some interspersed in-person coaching events provided by Redefined. And like I said, I'll intersperse the slides with a little bit of the emotional stuff. So here are the quotes from some of our colleagues about what it really meant to them to participate. This colleague talking about, I thought I was going to spend 15, 20 minutes in the software. I was in there for an hour. 2 hours later, I realized I was still in there. Really interesting for us. I would describe our journey on the digital space for our business as kind of, we're getting there, right? Some parts of our business were really at the cutting edge, and some parts we're getting there. From a colleague point of view, I would say our digital adoption for some of our training is fairly new. Okay, we're still quite a legacy business where we deliver training in person. We try and give a really good experience. We're trying to move more to a digital space. 87% adoption rate for these 45 colleagues was pretty high. Now, they were handpicked. They were motivated, but still, it was a very new type of engagement from a learning point of view at Tesco. And I was really happy with that. I think the one thing I'm really proud of is that 100% of colleagues said they felt more connected to Tesco after this fact. Now, they started reporting that very early on in that 14-week journey, which was really interesting. And that wasn't an explicit ask, if you like, up front. That really wasn't something I thought I'd be looking for. I was more interested in what do they want, what are they planning for. This is a really nice surprise to say, actually, they felt more connected. Really interesting for me was the average time spent by colleagues was 3 hours 52 in that 14-week period. That's a lot of time for someone to say, I'm sitting down, I'm going to spend some time engaging in this software. And the content rate at 4.3 out of 5, and we've captured a bunch of data points which are really interesting. So as a starting point, this is really good. Now we get into some of the real insight, which I hope you'll find interesting. 70% of our colleagues are planning for the next phase of their life and their career, and 1 in 3 felt unprepared for the future. So rather than see it as a negative, I see it as a real positive. One of the strongest sentiments coming out of this experience for our colleagues was that they were underestimating either their financial planning or they hadn't been planning at all. Some of the assumptions they'd made around what happens when you get to retirement, some of the assumptions they'd made around what they can do between now and retirement at Tesco. A lot of awakenings, a lot of discoveries for colleagues, but 1 in 3 feeling, after they'd done this, feeling unprepared. I think that's a really good result because it gives people a chance to say, okay, what am I going to do about that now? And that was a very strong sentiment coming through, which meant 70% are now saying, I'm actively planning differently. I'm doing something now that I wasn't doing before. I'll flick through some of those. So, early evidence. A couple of really interesting things for me come out of this. Of the 45 or so colleagues that participated in this proof of value, 45% said they were planning on retiring in the next 5 years. Not all were of that age profile where you might go, the normal retirement age in Ireland is 65, they're 60, they're 59, 60. There was quite a lot of people in that just over 50 mark saying, no, I'm planning to retire a little bit earlier than that. And then had the bit of awakening, which is, ooh, I'm not ready, actually. And part of it was financial, but part of it was more the emotional part, which is, well, what am I going to do, actually? I had made these assumptions. I had thought philosophically this is what we would do together, and if there's a significant other at the kitchen table, they're going, you're retiring in 5 years? You sure? You know, lots of those kind of interesting feedback from colleagues, which I can relate to. We discovered that we have a legacy defined benefit pension scheme that has some technical elements to it that actually are a barrier to so continuing to work on a part-time basis after normal retirement age or before normal retirement age. So something we have to look at, and a lot of misunderstanding about what that is and what it isn't, actually, which was really interesting. What we did discover was that, without a shadow of a doubt, there's a huge opportunity for us to strengthen the retention of those colleagues. A huge amount of insight from colleagues saying, don't think I can work here until my retirement date. Once you get to a certain age, Tesco wants you out the door. Not true, but somehow they'd built this up in their minds and actually said, maybe I can't. It's a demanding job, retail. You know, every day, whether it's on the floor in the store, facing customers every day, it's a demanding job. Some maybe thought, you have to work full-time, you want to work part-time, you got to go somewhere else. Not true. So we have a real opportunity to strengthen that. And then the other interesting thing was complete lack of awareness of our employee assistance programs. So if you think about the conversation at the kitchen table, you know, people, whether they're carers for a family member, you know, if you think about the financial planning and some legal issues that might come up, our employee assistance program offers free access to that type of advice, where colleagues weren't aware of that. So a real opportunity to say, by the way, we already have this resource. Why not tap into it? You don't have to make any big decisions, but as you're thinking and planning, maybe you should tap into some of this stuff. I love this one. It feels like they appreciate us and are investing in us. I thought it was a really nice and simple way. If I could have, 50 or 60% of our colleagues saying that, that'd be pretty nice, wouldn't it? I don't have to retire to start the dream. I'm now realizing I can phase it in. We had a lot of colleagues in this cohort who said, I'm going to do that thing I've always wanted to do when I retire. Some date in the future when I have all this time. And then realizing, actually, maybe the smartest thing to do is maybe start enjoying that a bit more now. And could I negotiate something with work to get that time and that flexibility? So really, really interesting. One really standout for me, and I was genuinely blown away by this, redefined less so, because they had the research from elsewhere, but really, really interesting for me is a real stark difference in terms of what our male colleagues and female colleagues were thinking of in terms of what they were prioritizing for their planning as part of the next phase of their career or retirement. And the standout is, if you look at the male one, emotional well-being. It doesn't show up in the female pie chart in any way. So of the male colleagues in this cohort, they were saying, 20% were saying, yeah, emotional well-being is really important to me. They were talking openly in their workshops around, I'm worried about my emotional well-being for between now and when I retire and when I retire. Doesn't show up in the female conversation at all. Really interesting contrast. Everyone wants the fun and enjoyment. Everyone's talking about their purpose and meaning. So do I really want to do this for the rest of my life? Yeah. What do I want to do after I retire? Do I want to retire? And then, again, a bit of a difference in terms of, for male colleagues, personal growth and learning was something a bit more front of mind in terms of what am I going to do now? Do I want to reinvent my career? All those types of conversations. But a really interesting contrast and something that helps me think about, well, what are we doing day to day now to help colleagues point them in the right direction for supports around that type of activity? I love this one. 60% reported an increase in clarity. So before coming into this pilot, maybe they thought they knew what they wanted, or they didn't know what they wanted, but coming out of it, 60% are saying, I have a much better clarity about what it is I'm looking at, what it is I'm planning for, what it is I want. Whether that's at work or in life generally, that's a really important thing. And I really love this, the confidence to do something about it. So 45% saying, not only do I have the clarity, I now have more confidence to go and do something about it. Whether that's just one thing or 10 things, they all took away something that they were confident about making some action on. And then Lindsay did reference in her opening around one of the proof of value concepts for redefining this in this work with us was the non-desk versus desk-based. So by far, the majority of our colleagues are not desk-based, whether that's working in a warehouse or working in one of our stores or driving the van that gets your home delivery to your house and to your doorstep, whatever that might be. And I think you'll see a really strong comparison here. So really interesting, talk about physical well-being as being one of those key focus areas for those who are non-desk based. Not really a surprise when you think about it. So they're demanding jobs. Physical well-being is a concern, but really interesting people are willing to openly talk about that and express their concern about that. We now know we can do something about that and support them on that, which is really valuable to us. Whether the desk-based gang think they've got it cracked, but they're all about emotional well-being, fun and enjoyment, and personal growth. They've got their purpose and meaning sorted by all accounts, so we're good to go. I'm not convinced by that, but it's interesting just the contrast, right? But from a non-desk perspective, I think it's much more nuanced. You can see there's a lot more things that people are thinking about for their planning. What are the factors that's in their minds? It's a lot more nuanced. There's a lot more in there. And if you like, there's a lot of things to get their head around, actually. So the sooner we can start to support colleagues on that journey, I think the better. And that would have been a surprise to me. I wouldn't have thought it had been as much of a difference between the both. At the end of the day, we all go home to a kitchen table somewhere. Are the kitchen tables that different? Well, I think this tells us that, yeah, the route back to those kitchen tables is a little bit different. So we need to think about that a bit more. And then back to some of the emotional piece. It has changed my view on where I want to be in life. It's pretty good, right? So I don't know if that feels good for that colleague, but it's definitely transformational in some way. My thoughts on retirement are starting to change. It will not need to be what my parents did. Our generation gets to do things very differently, and that is so true. And again, I don't want to overplay, but I wouldn't underestimate the impact of COVID on all of that. People's perspectives is very much coming through strongly. For any of you, and most of the room is in HR, you've had that conversation for a number of years now. What is it about it? Changing perspectives. I can see it coming through in this very, very strongly. So, finally, my reflections, my personal reflections, having gone on this journey with Redefined and gone on this journey with nearly 50 of our colleagues, what have we learned, actually? And there's loads of more insight and loads more data I could share with you, but today was around just kind of provoking a bit of thought and a bit of a conversation for you. So the experience has been overwhelmingly positive, I would say, in the sense of the team in Redefined. I couldn't thank them enough. They've been brilliant to deal with, great, just great personality, but brilliant insight and brilliant structure. That feedback would come from our colleagues who this would be a very, this wouldn't be a usual engagement we would do with colleagues, particularly our store-based colleagues. So they felt very supported. They felt that while the software, and particularly the Me Redefined package is very different. You're writing a script, you're writing your own movie, what you want your life to be. It's really, really good. They found it really challenged them in terms of what they want in life generally. And again, that links back into our ethos at Tesco. You know, I don't believe in work-life balance. There's work and life integration. I don't think you can ever make that choice in which is more important, which is not. The integration is really important. And I think at Tesco, that goes across everything we do. We want people to be able to go home, have a fulfilling life, and be able to come back to work and do what they do in a really fulfilling way as well. So the reflections I have is that definitely the aspirations of the midlife population are shifting. I'm one of those people. I can definitely say that, but we can see it from the research here that our colleagues are definitely, their mindset is shifting, their aspirations are shifting, and what they want out of work and life is definitely shifting. Financial well-being, remarkably to me, remains a huge oversight. Most of the colleagues in this pilot had underestimated really significantly the financial aspect of planning for their retirement and what it would take to get there and what they would have to do. So we know anecdotally people are living longer, so they have to work longer financially to sustain that longer life. But that's a huge oversight. So that's something we can actively support on today, and we do today, but we can see the level of engagement and some of those supports we have for colleagues is down. This gives us an opportunity to go out and push that in a much stronger way. We're clearly not doing enough to make sure colleagues are aware of that. The social factor is a powerful multiplier. That's a bit mouthy and wordy. I don't know what I was thinking when I wrote that. This comes down to social interaction. If I take our 92-year-old colleague who works 5 days a week, 3 hours a day, she doesn't need to do it financially. She does it because she loves the social interaction with customers and colleagues. It gives her a purpose getting out of bed in the morning, keeps her fit, and she loves it. She's phenomenal, by the way. But the social factor, that social interaction, is a huge factor. And that came out of this study very strongly. The colleagues saying, particularly our male colleagues, when they talked about the emotional well-being, that's what was at the back of their mind. But if I'm not working, what am I doing? And the research Redefined would tell us that actually, men find it harder to make friends later in life. So it's really interesting to get that piece. The opportunity for company support has a strong emotional impact from a tactical engagement. Again, I was trying to sound really good there for the slides. What this is all about is, this started as a tactical HR strategic piece of research. All sounds brilliant in the corporate world. This is an emotional topic, and that's what it comes back to. I started with, this is an emotional topic. It's sensitive for individuals. It's a kitchen table conversation, and that's exactly what we need to remember in all of this. So 22,000 colleagues. I can look at all the stats around age. I have a fictitious colleague in Ireland called Mary in Mallow. Me and my team use Mary as the kind of reference point for how will Mary receive this? How do we make sure Mary hears what we want her to hear? How do we make sure that Mary understands what we have to offer her as a colleague and how she can draw down that support? I think this is a really important one. This is an emotional topic, and we need to treat it sensitively, but not shy away from it. People need the help, and they're clearly saying that, and the research shows that. And then finally, and I'm gone 2 minutes over time, I would say as a group of HR professionals, and Lindsay mentioned the enterprise element of this. This isn't a HR problem. This is an enterprise-wide problem. We need to be open to the discovery on this. It's too easy go, actually, my starting stat was 25% of my workforce in Ireland is 50 plus. That's not too bad. We're okay. 5 years from now, that's going to progress so much further. This is definitely something we need to start looking at now and being prepared and starting to discover a bit more and understand what the challenges are. So I hope that's helpful in some way. Like I said, we're going to continue the journey with Redefined. We found it really helpful. We want to make this an offering, I guess, if you like, a bit of coaching that we offer to colleagues on an ongoing basis. We're certainly seeing the value in learning more about what we need to do as a business to be more flexible to colleagues who want different things. And it's definitely helping us understand, well, what does that flexibility mean for someone who's heading out of midlife into later life in order to sustain them in work? Because we need people to stay with us to sustain our business growth. So look, I'll leave you there. I'm happy to take questions now, Lindsay, or whatever way we want to do it.
Thank you, Maurice. Thank you. We have a couple of roving mics, and I would ask you to wait until the mic arrives. Put your hand up if you've got a question for Maurice. There's one over there, just so that we can capture it on the audio. And just whilst that first mic's going, There was just a couple of things around ROI. Because I mentioned when I introduced Maurice that he's a genuinely top bloke. And hopefully you can now see from your own experience he is. And so he's been valuing colleagues at the heart of this. But we know that for a number of organisations, that hardline ROI, what is the return on this investment, is absolutely key. And so we know that in that 14 weeks, we extended the career horizons of those colleagues by 3.5 years. And that has a real saving, doesn't it? Because that's €10,000 per annum.
That was one of my notes I couldn't read, so thanks for reminding me.
But it's, realistically, in a store in Ireland, for your storefront colleagues,
huge.
€10,000 per annum, times that by 3.5 years of not having to hire, to recruit, to train, to disrupt the relationship. And so what sits behind all of this and a layer of that intelligence is then, okay, what does this mean in terms of that save to invest? How do we invest in this and then save in attrition or save in engagement?
And the bigger win there, I would say, Lindsay, is the customer service experience. So by that extra 3.5 years, it's the customers that benefit from that more. And that's the biggest piece for me. So yeah, absolutely, the commercial numbers we should put on that, it has to stand up as a business case. Any of these initiatives have to stand up as a business case. It's an enterprise proposition, right? But the customer service element of that, I think, is the winner. Yeah. So having a colleague extend 3.5 years, our customers benefit from that, and we see that every day. So that's the win. The HR win is 3.5 years. The customer win is the consistency of that service and the knowledge that colleague continues to offer.
Brilliant. Thank you. I saw there was a mic over there.
Hi. I had a quick question about supporting people to pivot using apprenticeship opportunities. And wondered if you had anything to share on that. I think we've seen, sorry, I should say I'm Liz from BT, a lot of people using apprenticeship to pivot later on in life and really create a new and exciting career using ongoing qualifications.
Yeah, we don't have a formal program yet. What I would say is that there's probably a significant difference between apprenticeships, say in the UK, and apprenticeships in Ireland. There's a different level. It's much more advanced, much more open here in terms of the scope and opportunity. It doesn't mean there isn't opportunity. There's definitely opportunity to pivot. I guess what I would say, like I said at the start, is we're really learning, actually, we're very data-driven. From a Tesco point of view, it's the right thing. We ask our colleagues, where we should invest, what means most to them. I think this will help us uncover a bit. There's probably a piece built into our culture over years, which is that we haven't really had these very open conversations. And it's not because we didn't want to. It's just people have been focused on the business and delivering. So I think exercises like this really help us understand that actually, before we go down that direction, what is it we need to offer? So there's certainly a cohort of colleagues that say, I'd like to pivot. There's lots who say, I'd like to pivot, but it's something to be ready for retirement, as opposed to change my career right now. And it's about balancing that. But it's definitely something we look at as part of what we do to support colleagues in terms of that career transition. There's a huge opportunity for us. I talked about 13 years of tenure. We've got a lot of long service colleagues. There's a huge opportunity for us to convert that into a huge mentoring. I mean, the amount of knowledge we have in our business is phenomenal. We have a formal mentoring program. It's probably very focused on the head office functions and the professional functions. There's a huge opportunity to convert that for every little helps for customers. Those colleagues with tenure in our stores know best what customers want, and how can we convert that and maybe provide an opportunity for them to, as part of their role, do more and more of that mentoring of colleagues around customer service and how we go that extra mile for customers. So thanks for the question. We don't have anything formal today, but definitely something we're taking out of the research of how we can explore that and what colleagues actually want.
Yep. Another question? No? Oh, one here. If we could just wait for a microphone to come over. One here. Oh, there's one here. Sorry. Come to you next.
Can I ask how you positioned and communicated the programme to that target group without them feeling like they were the older workers that you were targeting? And what about the younger workers? Did it feel discriminatory to them that they were not included?
So we didn't do a mass communication saying, here's a program, open invites, because partly we want to be able to manage the volume. So we did, but what we did decide to do is do a range of ages. So it wasn't just 55 plus, we took a range of ages, and actually one of the benefits was we had a lot of the colleagues who were in that younger category, maybe that 40 to 45 category, going, the 45 to 50 category going, I wish I had done this earlier from a planning point of view. But also we want to handpick people who, number one, we knew would give us honest feedback and would be happy that it was a safe space. Because we believe in testing it and really understanding it in terms of before we go bigger. And we also wanted to really make sure that we got the right level of feedback, that it was really well balanced in terms of what was really helpful about it, but really where we are today supporting colleagues and not. So we took a range of colleagues. We wanted to mix up head office, retail, get a proper mix of that. So we didn't do an open communication, so I don't think anyone is feeling like they were left out. But there is, interestingly, definitely, as word spread, people going, can I have it next time you're doing it? Can I get access to it? I've heard really good things about it. So that's probably the best publicity. So if we can get that kind of a momentum, that'd be really nice, actually. So people who really are interested will come forward and say, yeah, I'd love a go at that. Thank you.
Yeah. And if you chat to any of us in the breaks, we've got a few different strategies and recruitment videos, actually, that we use to colleagues to get them excited about wanting to put their hand up and participate. But thanks for the question. And then there was a question just over here. And then I'm going to have to wrap it up, so this is the last one.
Hi there, Julie Stevens from Bupa. We're just about to do the diagnostic, so this is so helpful, thank you. My question was just around, in the pilot, the interventions that you try, so the learning and the coaching, what did you find was the most helpful and impactful in terms of the feedback that you received, or is it the bundle?
Yeah, do you know what? It was, part of me, I wasn't aware how much of that active coaching was happening in the workshop actually until afterwards, and I was a bit of an arm's length from that point of view. But what was really useful was the validation of the insights. So on the one hand, your colleagues going into Me Redefined, working through their modules, they share feedback all the way through. So they're sharing feedback around how they're feeling, is this helpful, is it not? And you can see in the detail that we have from the team is that you can see the engagement ramping up as they're going through the different modules. It's really, really good. And you can see the time they're spending on it. But then in the workshops, get the validation of that. So that what they do is then they describe in the coaching sessions what they're really thinking when they say that. So I'm feeling that, but here's what's behind it. Or I'm thinking about that, think about the male one around the emotional well-being. There was much more insight around, well, I don't really have many friends outside of work, and I kind of, this is what I do. What will I do after that? The concerns that, from a generational group of men would be very stereotypical, but actually talking about that with the coaches was really interesting and validating what they had put into their feedback. So I think that was really helpful, and it was all the way along. It wasn't at the end. It was after week 1, after week 3. You could see some of that validation coming through. So we knew we were onto something, and we knew the feedback we were getting was being validated, which was really helpful.
Also helps us nudge people through. So they can't access a backstage coaching session and that they've got to a certain point in the programme. And so for people that were kind of lagging behind on a cohort group, we could kind of nudge them and then they want to be in the room and talk about it. But we are sadly out of time. Maurice is with us for the whole day today, so please do grab him at coffee, please do speak to him at lunchtime, but please help me in extending him a huge thank you and a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.